And welcome back to another exciting video. I don't currently have a Mudskipper tank set up, but we have Mudskippers turning up in 2 days. So I'm going to emergency set up a 60 centimeter tank here on the bench. I'm going to pinch water from our saltwater moray eel tank, and I'm also going to pinch some water from one of our freshwater African tanks. So we've got a high pH. Mudskippers are brackish water, so they come from sort of lagoony areas, tidal areas between fresh rivers and salt. Fresh rivers and salt, fresh and salt. So they live in that in between. So brackish water just means in between full fresh and full salt. So we're going to aim for about half with this. They also need a high pH, which is pretty much the same as what we keep our African cichlids in and our marine tanks, obviously. Don't have many marine at the moment because of the whole flooding issue, but we do have a couple of marine tanks. So the whole idea is to have the 2-foot tank here, really nice sort of water area, little land area. Not going to use mud because obviously mud will turn everything muddy. So we're going to use a nice fine sand with substrate, and maybe do a cool little waterfall thing, some cool little branches and stuff like that. Let's get started with the tank. And just like that, everything is moved. I have my 2-foot tank. I'm going to ideally have substrate all the way up here, coming down, and then that's going to be the water area. So most people will view it from the side and the front. Water in here, substrate here, maybe a waterfall, and I might use like a plastic bag or something. Yes, it sounds dodgy, a plastic bag, so then I can put rocks over it so the water trickles down and goes into there. If this was going to be a permanent tank, I'd use like a 90 centimeter tank, sort of about that sort of size or bigger. But because it's only going to be temporary, we're just going for a 60 by 30 centimeter tank. And I think there's only about half a dozen little mudskippers turning up. So the first step is to set up the land area. So I'm using this high density foam, which is perfect for filtration. So it's big pond block foam. So you can use it for ponds, aquariums, everything like that. So the whole idea of this build is the water's going to seep through here. This is going to be our land slope here. Water's going to go underneath and then go into this filter, and then it's going to trickle back down. So the filter I'm using is one of these guys. They are awesome little filters. So retail for under $40. I think they're like $38 in the filming of this video. You could be watching this in the years to come, who knows? But they will work with that much water. So it sucks the water up through another sponge and then trickles back. So they are a super easy way of creating a waterfall without stuffing around with pipes and all that. All you do is suction cap it to the back of the tank, plug it in, it'll suck the water and the water will come down. So the next step we're going to do from this, and I'll show you from above, with the foam, we've got our foam going in different levels, obviously. You want to make sure that you don't have any little gaps or anything so that the fish or whatever you're keeping in there, like frogs and stuff, can get trapped in there. So we're going to put some flat rocks over this, some gravel, and then sand, and then we're going to aquascape. So next thing is the rocks. So next step is the rocks. And the rocks are in. So I've decided to go with smooth lava rock, which is a New Zealand rock. So loosely sort of scattered them all around. Hopefully the water will hit these and then trickle over there before it goes into the sponge. We can only hope. But so far so good. So the next step after all that is to put a coarser gravel, because if we put sand in at the moment, the sand's going to go in between all the little gaps and clog all that. So we're going to pack with a lot of gravel, mostly do sand down the bottom and a little bit of sand just so it all blends in. So gravel next. And just like that, the gravel is in. So don't get stressed when you see it looking horrible with the gravel in, because this is not the end product. And usually when you sort of get to this stage, it just looks horrible, like a whole pile of mess everywhere. But it's going to look much better once you get your sand in, once you get your branches in, and once the water actually goes in. So also don't be afraid to use extra little bits of sponges to fill up little gaps in that, because the last thing you want to do is whatever animals you're keeping, whether they're mudskippers or frogs or whatever, you don't want them getting trapped behind filters and all that. So extra little bits of sponge in little gaps with stones, you'll be fine. That's the easiest way of doing it. You can still pull it apart, take the filter out when you need to. And that is where we are so far. So just enough gravel to give us a nice slope. Next bit, we're going to put some sand down the bottom, a little bit of sand up the top. That sand is sort of going to go in between here over time. Don't stress, it's still going to look awesome. Then we're going to do some cool overhanging branches, fill it up with water, and hope our pump does what it wants to do. Let's jump to the sand. And we have sand. So it's looking a little bit different already. Obviously the sand will settle once the water's in there, but you can sort of see how it's changed the whole look of it again, if I can get past the reflections and that. All going well, we won't lose too much of the sand up the top, but the water's going to hit that spray, go into the sponge, and most of this is going to be water. So next thing we do is fill him up with water, get our pump going, and then we do our hardscape above the water. And great success. We have our waterfall. It's kind of working. We might need another rock or something there, but that gives them something to play in. They can do their thing, their little mudskippery jump things. So far, so good. It's a little bit murky. We just have it with fresh water so we can try out that. I will siphon that water out, get the brackish water in, and our cool branches. So let's jump now to the hardscape. And it is a million times better. How nice does that look, if I do say so myself? This is half the fun of making stuff because it looks totally different than what you'd expect once you finish. It's still not finished. Obviously, we're 2 days away from the Mudskippers turning up, so I will jump to the Mudskippers in the next minute or so. But that is pretty much our build. So Mudskippers are tropical. This whole room in here is heated up. So I think we're at about 28 degrees Celsius at the moment, which is lots of Fahrenheits. You can work it out if you're not in Celsius, wherever you live. So far, so good. It is working fine. We have our water trickling down here. It's cascading, it's going through under our sponges and then back up. One thing I did change was I did add a little bit of sponge to the outflow of the filter, just in case the Mudskippers are small enough that they can go into there and then hide in the filter. I've got a couple of little pipes for them to hide in as well, because in the wild they go in little burrows, so they're not really going to be able to easily dig in here. I think they're probably going to be able to dig under a few rocks, which is fine. But that is the basics. We've got our overhanging branches for them to sit and perch on, because Mudskippers love to perch just above the water. Ideally, if we were going to keep them long term, as I said before, we'd have them in a slightly bigger tank, so about a 90 centimetre tank at the smallest. This is a 60 centimetre tank. Obviously 90 centimetre tanks are wider and higher, so you get a lot more water volume as well. And we'd probably rig up some sort of tidal thing with a sump. And the way you'd do that is you'd obviously have a hole drilled in your tank, and then you can have your pump on a timer so it fills the water up, and then for half the day it'll fill it down again. And that'll just give them a more natural environment, because they usually come from tidal areas that sort of flood. It is looking pretty good, if I don't say so myself. Hopefully they won't eat my lady beetles. They're not real lady beetles, and they are glued on, so hopefully the kids will notice there's lady beetles in there. But that is where we are. We're going to jump now to the Mudskippers. Okay, and it is a couple of days later. We have lots of boxes of fish, but according to the invoice, there is only one Mudskipper somewhere in here. So let's jump to wherever that Mudskipper is. And the Mudskipper was in the first box we looked in. That little speck is a Mudskipper. To the tank. And if you like this video, click the thumbs up so we know. There is one Mudskipper in this enclosure. Isn't that wonderful? Hopefully we will get some more. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.